Birmingham City are a championship club who play in Birmingham at St Andrews, which has a capacity of 29,409. It is called St Andrews because it was located near to St Andrew's Church in Bordesley. Birmingham City's badge is quite unique, and it shows a globe and a football with a ribbon looping around carrying the team name and founding date. This badge actually came from a local newspaper, the Sport Argus, who ran a competition in 1972, with the current badge being the winning entry from a man named Michael Wood, an engineer. Birmingham City were founded as Small Heath Alliance in 1875, later becoming Small Heath FC. In 1890 they joined the Football Alliance, which would become the second division a few years after they joined. In 1894 they managed to win promotion to the first division for the first time. The club changed its name to Birmingham Football Club in 1905 and moved to St Andrews the next year. After time spent in both the top and second division for the next couple of decades, they went to their first FA Cup final in 1931, but they lose to nearby rivals West Brom 2-1 in the final. The name Birmingham City FC was finally adopted in 1943, but for the next 2 decades, Birmingham would just flip between the first and second division quite often. But they would reach the FA Cup final again in 1956, losing this time to Man City 3-1. Birmingham would then have success in the Intercity Fairs Cup, which was essentially the precursor to what is today the Europa League. They were the first English side to reach the semis in this tournament in 1956. They were the first English side ever to get to a European final in 1960, where they lost to Barcelona, and they'd beat Inter Milan home and away in the semi the following year, being the only English side to win at the San Siro for the next 40 years. And in 1963 they'd play in the League Cup final against their biggest rivals Aston Villa, and although Villa seemed to be the superior team on paper, City would beat them 3-1 on aggregate and win their first ever major trophy. During the late 60s and 70s, Birmingham returned as a club that would bounce around between the first and second division, and with some financial problems they'd end up selling players that would break transfer records. The first being Bob Latchford to Everton for £350,000, and then famously they sold Trevor Francis to Nottingham Forest for £1 million, the first ever to reach that mark. The 80s saw an even worse time for Birmingham as financial troubles deepened, culminating in their first ever trip to the third division in 1989, and the club was in administration not long after this. However, in 1993 they'd be bought by David Sullivan and David Gold, who you may know as the current West Ham owners. Under their stewardship, Birmingham would reach the League Cup final in 2001, but lose on penalties to Liverpool. The next year they'd be promoted with Steve Bruce as their manager, beating Norwich in the playoffs. After some decent seasons in the Premier League, Birmingham were relegated in 2006, but would quickly return the following year. New Chinese ownership then came in 2007, but a trend where Birmingham would become a yo-yo club, going down from the Premier League one year and then returning the next, was created and would last until 2011, where they went down to the Championship and have stayed there since. But in that same year, they won their second League Cup, beating Arsenal 2-1 in the final. Their greatest achievement would probably be either of the League Cup wins, but the one over Villa in 1963 must be especially sweet. Ever since their creation as Small Heath in 1875, they have always played in a blue shirt, with white shorts and blue socks being the norm. And their nickname is nice and predictable. They are the Blues. Birmingham's biggest rivals would definitely be Aston Villa, whom they contest the second City derby with, and other West Midlands clubs like Wolves and West Brom would come close behind. One interesting fact about Birmingham is that in 1995 they won the Football League trophy whilst in the third tier, and did so by scoring the first ever golden goal. And that is the quick history of Birmingham City. Up next is Blackburn Rovers.